do you operate out of?
James. I'll text you a couple pictures.
Okay. Well, I've been watching some stuff on Facebook. I just don't get really engaged.
Commissioners, we are live.
Wonderful. I'll get started then. Good morning, everyone. My name is Brian Moffitt. I would like to welcome everyone to the September 10th, 2021 meeting of the Downtown Commission. The Asheville Downtown Commission was created by City Council for the sustainability and continued development of downtown, a vital urban center of Western North Carolina's economic, cultural, and visitor activity. The Downtown Commission provides City Council with recommendations on downtown policies and initiatives. In addition, Downtown Commissioners fill 4 out of 9 seats of the city's Design Review Committee, which reviews development projects within the Central Business District, the River Arts District, and hotel projects outside of those areas. The Downtown Commission also has the opportunity to provide input on projects outside of the scope of design review. All committee members and staff are participating virtually. We appreciate your patience as we work through committee meetings a bit differently, although I don't know how different it is after over a year. We are streaming live on our Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through the Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website, and also linked on the Downtown Commission's committee page. We have an option for the public to listen live by phone. And for anyone out there with us today, welcome. At this time, I will go through and introduce all the committee members who are participating virtually. You all know the drill. Please keep your microphone muted if you are not speaking. And when you have a question or would like to speak, please unmute. Please remember to mute your phone after you're done speaking. Committee members, as I call your name, please indicate your presence. Commissioner Berger is not here. Commissioner Franzi Charon is not here. Commissioner Fletcher.
Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Hunter.
All the way here.
Commissioner Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. I'm here. Commissioner Raines.
I'm here. Good morning.
Good morning. Commissioner Rodriguez.
Here.
And Commissioner Rogers.
Here. Good morning.
And Commissioner Ruth Summers is not here. And Sage Turner, our City Council representative.
Present. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. At this time, I will start our committee agenda items. Our agenda is also linked on our committee webpage. If anyone wants to follow along, I will do my best to state each section of the agenda out loud and do a vocal roll call when and if we have a vote. If anyone needs to speak, please raise your hand, and I will do my best to keep up with it and call on you. So we're going to go over, we've got some new business and presentations from a presentation from the Office of Data and Performance. We've got 3 project review development impact discussion, one for 39 Patton Avenue, one for 61 Biltmore, one for 217 Hilliard Avenue. We're going to discuss our committees, and we're going to do committee updates and reports. We did receive a public comment, which I can find here, regarding downtown Patton road repairs. We have a request that we says some major attention needs to be given to the upkeep of the section of downtown Patton Avenue, as it's a reflection of the city of Asheville. And I think that's our only public comment received to date. Correct? Good. All right. Then we'll roll into, we've got to do approval of minutes. You should have received, again, so we're not doing a full minutes. We have draft action minutes. The video recording serves as the full minutes of the meeting. So if anyone has any questions or would like to make a motion to approve the draft action minutes from our August 13th meeting.
I will make a motion to approve the minutes.
I think Kim won.
I'll second it then.
All right. We've got Kim made the motion and Gio seconded. So I'll do the roll call. Andrew?
Aye.
Thank you. Kim?
Aye.
Stephen Lee?
Aye.
Robin,
Aye.
Gio,
Aye.
and Megan,
Aye.
and Sage. Sorry. I saw the I didn't hear it.
Aye.
Thank you. Sorry. All right. Now we'll do.
Can I just say for a second something, that public comment?
Yeah.
I mean, since they managed to comment, let's just let them know if they're listening in that that is a state road. We don't actually get to decide when to pave it, but I agree.
The downtown portion is city maintained.
Yeah,
Incorrect.
I believe it's from Ashland to Pack Square is city maintained, and from Ashland west is state maintained. Is that?
I think it's all the way to Klingman, is my understanding. I can double check.
Okay. Megan, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I actually recently heard from a member that same comment. So it's just interesting timing that, people are looking at that road, and it is a gateway into downtown that I think we could do a lot to improve. So maybe something to put on a future agenda.
And folks can report messy roads, broken potholes on the Asheville app, and they add up and you get a response, and maybe it's on a timeline somewhere and that could be found out.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. I think our any other comments regarding the public comment? Perfect. Our first item of new business is a overview of work in the resources for setting goals and objectives from the Office of Data and Performance. We have Eric Jackson and Natalie Bailey on the line, and I will turn it over to them.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Natalie Bailey. I am the Data Communication Specialist for the Office of Data and Performance. We have a presentation that I will get up now and we will get started. Let's see. Thank you for your patience. I'm having some technical issues, but while we're doing that, while I'm trying to get together, can everybody see this or no?
We can see it.
You can see it. Thank you very much.
Maybe try if you go into present mode.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
There
right.
you go.
Now we're good.
We're good.
Okay, thank you. All right, so again, thank you for your patience. My name is Natalie Bailey. I am the Data Communication Specialist for the Office of Data and Performance. This is my second foray at the city of Asheville. Years and years ago, I worked in the city manager's office. Glad to be back. I'm going to turn it over to Eric and Cameron to introduce themselves.
So good morning. Good morning. I need to. Two espressos apparently were not enough. So I'm Eric Jackson. I manage the Office of Data and Performance. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I have been with the city just over 5 years now. So, Cameron?
Hi, my name is Cameron Henshaw. I'm the performance analyst. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And I'm pretty new to the city. I just hit the 6 months mark, and really excited to be here.
Okay, and again, I'm Natalie, pronouns she, her, and hers. And so today we are just going to give you all a brief overview of the office, what we are currently doing, and the tools you all can use as advisory board members in your own work. And I'm turning it over to Eric to talk about our mission.
Cool. Thank you. So this is our mission statement, and I kind of want to highlight 3 pieces out of it. And the first piece is that word empower. Our role is not so much to go and do a lot of data things. It's really to enable others to do the work. And we're going to talk a little bit in the next few slides about some of the ways we do that. The second thing is that community and city staff piece. We're in the IT department, but we are not just an internal service department. Our goal is to make a difference in our staff's ability to use data and think in terms of performance, but also to make a difference in the community's ability to advocate for themselves using data. And then the last thing I want to kind of emphasize is what it's for. We're really focused on thinking about outcomes. And when we think about outcomes, that's a much more effective way to make sure that we're interweaving equity in what we're doing. Accountability is really making sure not only that we're being accountable to the public, but that we're being accountable to our own goals and to each other, making sure that we can really demonstrate what it is we're trying to accomplish and whether or not we're making progress. And I would also emphasize that third one of communication. Part of the way we look at data and our performance framework is that it helps if we can kind of all get on the same page about what we're trying to accomplish, what results we're looking for, and how we're going to tell whether we're making progress. And go ahead and go on to the next one, and I'll turn it back over to Natalie for a second.
All right, then. So we're going to talk about how does ODAP work? And Eric touched on it just a few seconds ago. We engage with the public and we are focused on reporting. So developing standard ways to report to the public that are data grounded and data driven, and creating ways to participate for the community to participate in defining what success means to them regarding programs or services. And so it's all about being on the same page and making sure that people not only are on the same page, but we're all speaking the same language. And that's what developing standardized ways to report and measure does. It also ensures that folks are receiving the same information, which speaks to equity, and which is always a concern because some people have access socially, in other ways to information many times ahead of time, sometimes better information, or just by the way things are set up here in the world that we live in. And so making sure that things are standardized and data driven, grounded in data, helps to even that playing field out a bit. And then creating ways for the community to participate. And so this is a really big one for me. In my previous position, I did some media management and some community engagement work. And it's really important to make sure that not only is your message accessible and understandable and data driven and all those things, but to also make sure that the messaging is tailored to the community, that it's targeted in a manner in which the community can access it and is willing and likely to access it. And so having that at the heart of our work is very important to me, and it means a lot. The data informed decision making, integrating our data decision making into all of our key city process. And Eric will touch on this in greater detail about the budget. But again, looking at how departments make decisions, making sure that those decisions are informed by data and that they are driven by data, and evaluating how these decisions are made, and how the resources are actually allocated, and thinking about that in a more in-depth and thoughtful way, and the impact that it has. And so with that, I'm sure Eric is going to touch on that a little bit more, but I'm going to turn it over to him.
So I actually want to underscore, before I go on to the budget and process piece, that I see a question. We will. I'll make sure that we get back to that. I want to emphasize the second bullet there on public engagement. The people who are receiving services, who are participating in programs, are the experts about whether they're better off as a result of those programs. And so making sure that we have ways to bring those most impacted into the process of defining what success means is really critical. The other thing that I would say is that 5 years in government has taught me that if there is not a process behind something, then it will not in fact be sustainable. The premier process in the city is the budget. And so we want to make sure that we are particularly well tied into that, and you'll be hearing this year about, we started that last year, and you'll hear a lot more this coming year. But looking for ways, wherever there's a process, to integrate thinking about what the outcomes are, thinking about how we're going to measure progress, and communicating that in ways that are accessible and kind of well understood, so that we're constantly doing things the same way, so that people know where to look and what to expect. In order to do that, we're really asking that people change how they do what they do, and that's in order to do that, those changes are big. And so a lot of our work is going to be around helping people learn how to do those things differently. We've developed, over the past year, we've run a number of classes. We have a couple more going this fall for staff. We're also starting to transition to more of a focus on a kind of combined training and facilitation with teams on specific projects, so that it's a learning and doing kind of approach. And we also have internal resources like a twice monthly newsletter from the program, a discussion channel, and an internal communication group. And before I go to governance, let me just look and see what the question was from Ms. Hunter. So that is a really good question.
You need to, if you're going to respond to the question, I need
Yep.
you to read it so that everyone listening to the call can see it, know what you're responding to. Thank you.
So the question is, how does this department respect and integrate the absence of data for groups who are underrepresented and or not represented? And, you know, I don't have a nice, short, easy answer for that. I think we start by recognizing and acknowledging that that is true. A lot of our work is kind of looking at cases where we don't have the ability to disaggregate data, or we have good reason to expect, for historical reasons, that we're not getting the full story. And then specifically making efforts to do that, to collect that data. I think the other piece that I would emphasize is we think very broadly about data. That can be numbers, it can be official statistics, but it can also be narrative kinds of data. And that's really important, that we're not kind of limiting this to officially collected statistics that do have a lot of issues in terms of missing people, failing to disaggregate information. Go ahead, Ms. Hunter. I think you're on mute.
You're muted, Kim.
Thank you all. Yeah, I appreciate your delving into that. I don't want to take up too much time, but I think the core of what I'm asking as well is to really ask, where is there margin put into place for absent data? And that becomes part of a collection source, because I love data like the next person. I'm a geek and a nerd and all those things. I think where city and governance work misses the mark sometimes is taking data for being some total experience of what needs to happen next, and doesn't actually integrate into the formulation the absence of data, and looking for that absence and calculating that as part of how to move forward as well. So I just wanted to offer that insight and ask if you have anything to speak to that. Thank you.
So I really appreciate, thank you. I appreciate the question. And again, I don't have an easy answer, but it is a nice segue partly into the governance piece. So it's important that the governance piece is not very exciting, but it is foundational. And some of it is fairly technical. You need data systems that make sure that you've got things updated appropriately, that data is accurate, and I want to come back to complete. And of course that you're protecting against both malicious actors and inadvertent harm. We think about that a lot. But the other piece is thinking and being very deliberate about asking questions about completeness. And I think you will start to see that we're working with the Homeless Initiative folks right now around doing a better job of kind of just reporting out data that we do have, and then starting to build from there. And one of the big questions there is, how much of that data do we actually have? How complete is it? How sure are we that it is representative? There's never going to be an easy automatic answer to that, but doing exactly what you said of integrating that into the analysis and really asking the questions about whether the data we have is representative, whether there are skews or biases built into the data because of the way it was collected or because who was collecting it. There are lots of questions around that. And again, there's no simple way, but I definitely want to emphasize that that's very top of mind for us. So thank you for the opportunity. Why don't we go ahead? So I'm not going to dwell on this. These are some of the things that we're working on, and I could go on and on about any one of them. If any of you are interested in being terribly bored, I'm always happy to do that. But this kind of gives you a sense of the breadth of the kind of work we're doing. So some of this is about collecting and sharing data. Like I said, we're working on houselessness, starting by just doing a better job of reporting out the data we do have, and then starting to, particularly with the amount of investments that we're making sure that we're really tracking the impact of those investments. We're doing some collection of baseline data to be a resource for the Reparations Commission. We're doing a lot of internal work supporting data collection around equity. We also do other kinds of data support. So for the business inclusion program, just making sure that it's as easy as possible, as frictionless as possible to look up vendors for outreach, or we're participating in planning for the American Rescue Plan Act funding to make sure that we're putting in place reporting procedures so that we really can track impact. And as I said, we're working to integrate with the budget process. Already talked about capacity building. I do want to call out that we're starting to get inventories built so that we know what data we have internally, but also what resources are available externally, and wherever possible, sharing that also with the public. And then I spoke a little bit about governance. I'm going to go ahead and hand off to Natalie to talk a bit more about engagement. Well, beginning though by noting that part of our public engagement is showing up here today, and we're going to be doing this with all the boards and commissions, because you all are obviously an important part of engaging with those who are most engaged, like you.
So the engagement, and I really want to, I appreciate Commissioner Hunter's question. As I do any type of engagement activity, I always start with who we are not hearing from, and I go from there. That's just how I personally conduct my engagement work, because oftentimes, especially in government and especially in local government, issues and policies that are enacted and voted upon have the most impact on folks that you hear from the least. And so I really appreciate that question. Our process began, I'm from here, I'm a native, and the nature of my work has allowed me to establish a lot of relationships with community members and service providers, and just folks that I know from growing up here. And so we started the process by reaching out to those folks and having brief conversations just to gauge what they think about access to city services, what they would like to see us track and measure, and then most importantly for me, how they would like to see any type of reporting, out to the community outside of an annual report, which we all know those things are important, but other methods and ways in which to get information out to folks. And so we've done that over the past few months, and it's yielded quite a bit of narrative data in a narrative form. It's been really interesting, and those opportunities have led to other opportunities to speak with groups that are just as impacted, although we don't hear from them and as often as we should. And one of those groups are young people. So we were able to have a listening session with 35 of the youth interns with the city of Asheville over the summer with the Kayla program, and hearing from them about their perceived or very real access to city services, barriers to access to city services, and the experiences that their parents and neighbors have. And that information really is informing a lot of our work. And we will continue to have those type of conversations and meeting with the boards and commissions, because you all are involved with city government in a way that the average person is not. And taking that information and informing it into our projects and thinking about how we look at impact of projects and outcomes as well. So, if I haven't reached out to you personally, just wait, I will. It's something that, we have talked about. We keep a running list of folks, and we keep a running list of that information because it is very valuable, and we will continue with our engagement efforts. So I'm gonna hand it back to Eric.
It looks like Mr. Rodriguez has a question.
Okay.
Ms. Bailey, it's a question for you, because you just touched on the topic of communities and communities that may not perceive that they have their concerns listened to. And
yes.
The two communities that I want to mention are the LGBTQ community, as well as the Latino Hispanic community. And I'm just wondering, what attempts have been made to reach those communities, both of which I'm part of, and I just want to make sure that we're and reached out to. And especially our when you're talking about homelessness and houselessness and low resources, our trans and youth communities that are greatly impacted by the lack of stable home relationships.
Right. Thank you so much for bringing that up. I've reached out to folks at the Campaign for Southern Equality, and I haven't heard back. And to be honest with you, I did not have a good contact for folks in the Latinx community. So I would love to be able, if you're comfortable with it and you're willing to touch base with you on anybody that is representative of those issues or advocates for those issues within the community, because you are absolutely right. Those voices are missing, and particularly when it comes to housing vulnerability for trans youth. That is something that I definitely would like to see us look at and address. And so if you have any ideas or any contacts, I would appreciate it, because I would like those voices to be heard.
I definitely do, and maybe we can. I'll try to shoot you an email. If you can shoot me an email, and we can.
I will shoot you an email. Yes.
There's also a group in town that deals Youth Outright, which deals with youth, and then our statewide organization, Equality North Carolina, now has a Western North Carolina advocate right here in Weaverville. So I'll try to put you together with them and then work with some of the Hispanic Latino community.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Ms. Hunter.
Yeah, thank you all for this presentation. My question is, when it comes to RBA, results-based accountability, have you considered including results-based accountability that's not driven by a dominant outcome? Like, for example, people with different points of view, different needs of outcome, coming closer together to actually get to the desired result. Is that a form of how you're looking at accountability, not just did we accomplish this? Because personally, I notice with governments and institutions and nonprofits that people decide on a goal or an outcome, but what they also don't account for sometimes is maybe it isn't the thing that got accomplished, but there was 60% more collaboration from people with all different diverging interests to get to further down the road. And so my thought process is, Is there grace in there somewhere? Is there margin in there somewhere? Not for the whole thing, but for some of it where maybe the goal actually isn't accomplished, but you can see collaboration, participation, other soft quality touches that actually conclude to the outcome and not just from a dominant culture methodology.
So I think you're ahead of everybody else on the call now, knowing what we're talking about. But I love that question. And let me talk briefly kind of about the framework and how we're using it. And then I want to come back and address that specifically because it's actually something I haven't framed in that way, and I love that framing. But it is the kind of thing that I've thought about. So one of the things I want to get across, when we start talking about data, we can think of this as kind of a fancy technical, we're going to do machine learning and AI and really, maybe down the road we're going to do some of that. Although this office is much more likely to warn about some of the dangers of some of those technologies than to get enthusiastic about implementing them everywhere. But what we're really doing is starting way back and trying to think about how we have a disciplined way of thinking about what we're doing and whether or not it's working. We are using this framework called results-based accountability, or RBA. And I was going to ask, and I know one hand that will go up, is how many of you all are actually familiar in any way with RBA? Is a few of you? Okay. So, and there are 3 reasons that we're using it. One of them, and the reason I even knew about it, was that it lies at the foundation of the racial equity toolkit that the city has adopted from GARE, or the GARE Government Alliance on Racial Equity. The GARE toolkit is built on top of RBA, and when I went to look at the toolkit, that's kind of when I discovered it. We're also adopting it. We've also adopted it because it's seeing pretty widespread adoption, both in our community, led by public health and healthcare industries, but it's also being used now in education, led by the United Way, and among some of the nonprofits. It's also been kind of designated an approved framework by the state and really has seen growing use nationally. But the third and for me most important reason is that it's really simple. And so there's not a lot of kind of terminology and framework that people have to learn. It's really grounded in asking some simple questions. Getting clear on who we're talking about. So if it's a program, who are the customers? If it's broader than that, what communities are we talking about? And really just saying, what does it mean for them to be better off? And what specifically are we looking for in terms of results? And a big part of RBA is saying, start with the end that you're trying to achieve and work back. So what are the results you're going to look for? How do you know you're succeeding? And it's really important to decide that in advance so that you're not tempted to move the goalposts in order to make things look a little better than maybe they are. Deciding how we're going to measure those performance measures can be, we think about that broadly, can be hard numbers if we have good numbers. But in many cases, it's going to be important to include narrative data as well as a way of making sure that we're capturing the full picture. And then when we're starting, we always want to ask kind of what the baseline is. And an RBA baseline is not just what's the situation right now. It's what's going to happen if we don't change anything. So whatever our metrics might be, are they going to stay flat if we do nothing? Are they going to be going up? Are they going down? And then the term in RBA is we want to turn the curve. So if we are not satisfied with what's going to happen if we do nothing different, then what we want to do is turn that curve. And of course, we have to at least have a reasonable idea of what that curve is, what's going to happen if we do nothing. So we define that baseline, we decide what we're going to do, and then most importantly, this is a loop. We want to come back, hopefully relatively quickly, and that will get me to Ms. Hunter's question. Very often, the end results are things that are going to be pretty far out in the future. We do hard things in government. Often we take on things that have a long timeline, and we don't want to wait 10 years to find out that it didn't work. We want to be able to kind of cycle and learn as we go. And part of what that means for me is we don't just talk about the end results. We talk about the theory of our theory of change. How do we think we're going to get there? What are the elements that are going to indicate that our theory is right or wrong? And we want to measure those. So we may know 3 months from now that what we think is going to happen is not happening, even though it's, the final impact may not show up for years. We can start to say, we think this is going to work. Here's how we think it's going to work. What should we be seeing soon if it is working? And I think, so that doesn't automatically get us to that question of just having the dominant culture definition of end results drive the entire process. But I think it does bring us, give us an opportunity. And I want to think more about what you said, Commissioner Hunter, as to how to do that. But it gives us an opportunity. In fact, I will say, just from one deep dive engagement we did with an internal team, there is a lot of interesting thinking that needs to be done around who is the customer and what is better off, and to really think broadly about that. And it's not just achieving some end goal down the road, but also how are people being impacted by the process. And I think there's enough in the way we're thinking about it to bring in some of those other considerations. And I definitely want to think more about the question, because part of my conviction is 90% of doing things better is asking the right questions at the right time. And then there's a little bit of technical work around it. The technical side is always the easy part. And the hard part is making sure you're asking the right questions and talking to all of the right people along the way. This is a very quick dip into kind of what we're doing and how we're thinking about it. I think it is relevant to you in several ways. I think these questions, and we are happy to go kind of deeper dive on any of them, but you can apply them to your work. You can apply them even just to a single commission meeting. What are we trying to achieve, and how are we going to tell if we got there? Just asking those questions is really powerful. You can also ask staff these questions. Part of what will drive change is, and part of what we're doing is trying to help the community come to expect different things, even as we're helping staff think about doing things differently. And using some of the terminology and thinking in your own communities, because part of what we want to do is build shared language and a shared framework for thinking about these things. This presentation will be made available to you, and there's some links there for ways of keeping up with us, but also we invite you at any point to just reach out with questions, ideas, anything else. And we have a next slide with some questions that we might discuss here, but I think at this point, I want to turn it back over to you all and see what other questions and discussion there are.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, thanks you all for that presentation and the work you do. When it comes to accountability, data is a huge part of that, and just knowing where we're at and where we're going forward. So really glad to see that y'all are on board, and to hear your attitudes about that. I know that data is important, but I've also seen it be misused. So I've noticed, particularly around budget season, the police department likes to release data, and it seems to be keyhole data view. And by the time citizens can ask and get some broader picture data back, budget season's over and there's in the politics of the moment have passed. I'm wondering if you guys can, what do you work with all the departments in the city? Do you work with the police department with their releasing their data? And how what do you think is the if for a regular citizen to say I want to get a data set that shows a more complete picture than is being voluntarily released? How is are you guys a good stop for that?
I think we're not really we are not the gatekeepers for data. If you have a request for data, that's going to come in through the public records officer and then go to the department. I think our role is to collectively start to set standards for how we do this thing, how we communicate broadly with the public. And I think one of the things that I mentioned before might, speaks a little bit to what you're saying. Making sure that first we're naming in advance how what are the measures, and that we're involving the community in defining those measures, which is less about, I think one of the things I would emphasize is from the perspective of our work, we're going to be less concerned about single data releases and more concerned about ongoing communication and reporting and measuring of performance. So being clear and making sure that we broadly involve the community in defining what success means, and then making sure that we have the data to back up the full picture. And again, there are three of us, which is part of the reason we're not going to become the keyhole through which everything happens. But also our job is really to kind of help the city as a whole set those standards, kind of come up with those conventions, and then help all of the departments to follow them. I hope that sort of addresses your question.
Thank you.
How do you coordinate with and integrate with other groups in the area that are doing similar research and data, like the State of Black Asheville and Dr. Mullen's group?
So we are enthusiastic about collaborating with anybody, partly because there are three of us. So for example, one of the projects we have going is just collecting some baseline data to share with the Reparations Commission when it forms. We began that work at the city manager's request before I think it was the second information sharing and truth telling session that Dr. Mullen spoke at, the originator of the State of Black Asheville. And so we started working with Dr. Mullen to provide him with some data for that presentation, and are continuing to collaborate with him on what the data sets are and how they might be used. But we've expanded that collaboration. We're working with some folks at UNCA, and as well as the UNC Chapel Hill MPH program here around health data. And we are in conversation with United Way about education data. I think part of our philosophy is there is way more work here than any one group, but also than any one agency can do. And most of the data we're talking about is stuff that the city is not directly responsible for, but only a contributor to. So building a relationship with the performance management folks at the county, building a relationship with Land to Sky, as well as relationships with folks like MAHEC around health data, United Way around education. So yes, and we are always excited to hear about somebody we might not be collaborating with yet. So please, if you know of somebody we should be talking to and both sharing data with, but I hope one of the areas we want to go is to be able to have kind of quality of life indicators for the whole community. And the vast majority of those indicators involve data that the city does not own, does not generate. And so to do that, we're really going to have to collaborate with those other agencies and hopefully make that a joint effort rather than just a city-owned effort.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time? I don't see any. Well, we very much appreciate the work that you're doing, and we appreciate your time with us this morning. You are free to hang around and watch the rest of it, or not. However you want to do. You can collect some data right now.
I would love to, but given that I have 45 minutes and then 6 hours straight of meetings, I might take advantage of the break. I do want to say that we really appreciate your giving us the time, and would love to hear from any of you.
Very good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next item of business is a project review development impact discussion. We've got 3 projects to take a look at. The first one is 39 Patton Avenue facade changes. It's a level 1 project, and I'm not sure who's presenting. Oh, hey, Sasha. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am presenting the first couple of projects, and then Shannon will present on the last one. I will share my screen. I won't be able to see you, so
We'll shout.
sorry. Okay. So this is 39 Patton. It is maybe it's a building right next to the the Wells Fargo building, and it runs between Patton and College. This building was changed a fair bit over the years, and if you go there today, you'll see there's like a wooden bar across here. There was a mezzanine put in here, which they are taking out. They are basically doing kind of a restoration on this building, and up to the kind of to the Secretary of National Park Service and State Historic Preservation guidelines. So the ground floor, similar to the building we looked at last month, has been changed significantly over the years. And actually, the architect shared with me this photo of this. If you can see right here, a number of our buildings were covered with aluminum in the 50s as a way to kind of revitalize downtown. So you can see the building here was covered up for a while as well. So they're maintaining and kind of rehabilitating the upper floors. This is a mixed-use project. This will be, I think, either an office or retail space, and then 2 condominiums above. And on the College Street side, they are similarly kind of keeping the original, materials and kind of honoring the industrial nature of that facade. There are some small changes to the College Street lower facade, which was also changed a lot over the years. So let's see. So those are the floor plans. I don't know if there's also in your packets we have, kind of the details of what materials are being used. This is how it looks today. And then, sorry. So this is how it's being restored to something a lot closer to what it was historically on the ground floors. And I don't have a lot else to say about this project. I think it's pretty simple. It's what we want to see for downtown projects. Keeping going back to the historic architecture and this building is one of those that over the years, as you go by, you can kind of tell it was kind of messed with. You know, Patton is a little bit higher than College Street. So it's a 3-story building on Patton and a 4-story building on College Street. And sometimes those elevation changes make people kind of, they mess with the storefront sometimes to kind of accommodate those changes. So I guess adding the mezzanine in this building changed it. So it really wasn't a storefront anymore. It was just an entrance with kind of an up and a down. So does anyone have any questions about this project or comments?
So is it going to SHPO for review, State Historic Preservation Office?
You know, it doesn't actually say that. I know that when we originally talked this winter, when they started work on this, they were doing a tax credit project. Doesn't say that, so I need to ask that. But originally, I thought it was.
I'm just curious. But to the best of your knowledge, because if it is, they may have some small changes or suggestions to make. And as long as it's not a big change, it wouldn't have to come back to this body. And is this also going to the design review board next, correct?
Yes, I should have said that. Yeah, so this will be at the DRC next Thursday. And it's a level 1 project because it's such a small building.
Mm-hmm.
It's around, I think, 12,000 square feet. So.
Okay. Well, does anyone have any questions regarding this project? Andrew.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's going to be any street treatments or or there's going to be any sidewalk work or anything like that. Or are we just talking facade and interior remodel?
I think we are just talking about the facade and interior. I realized they didn't include a site plan. I know they're maintaining this street tree that's here on Patton Avenue. This is one of those situations like we had with the Tyler building on Lexington, where if they were going to change anything, it really, it kind of disrupts everything. We'd have to have like really a street plan and changing the street. I don't think at this point they are planning on any of that.
Because I noticed that they've got a utility box on the college side, and it doesn't appear in the new facade. And I wonder if they're enclosing it or if they're going to have to bury that in some way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the street view on my other monitor here, and it looks like just looks like a ye old electrical box that is adjacent to the Wells Fargo building.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering if they're going to be planning on moving that. That means they're doing sidewalk work, and that means that they've got a out of date sidewalk because they're not going to require them to replace the brick on that side. Obviously, we'll go to the new standard for sidewalk, I imagine. I just wonder if that if they've thought that far ahead, if they're not showing that utility box there, it's got to be someplace.
Good question.
They might not just.
I could get back to you on that.
Yeah, they just might not be showing that in the renderings.
Yeah, or that maybe they just may cover it or boxed in, but then at the same time that question is that, well, whose right of way is that? Can they just that means the building is actually coming out farther than it is right now. So anyway, these are I know this is just a facade review, but that utility box is on the facade, so it's going to go someplace.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. I will check into that.
I see you, Robin.
On the demo plan, it says that they're to remove the existing electricity meter transformer and provide new per upgraded power. So I think they're just going to replace it. And I just think they probably didn't put it on the rendering because it's not pretty. But on the demo sheet, A3.00, it's dashed in red. And it says provide new per upgraded. So from that, I would think that they're going to put a new one there. But it could be something that they need to clarify for sure.
If it's a transformer, they could just be moving it inside the building. If it's just a
True.
meter,
True.
it might just be going away. But that's a good catch, Andrew. We'll make sure that we catch it, basically address it with the applicant, and we'll also make sure he at least has an answer for the design review board.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay.
On the next sheet, sorry, on the next sheet, A4.00, it says new flush mounted CT cabinet for upgraded power service beyond. Size to be determined, and it's dashed, so it looks like it's beyond the wall.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I will check on that, and I will check on where the property line is and how we can deal with that.
Okay.
Should I?
Go ahead, Sasha.
I was gonna say, should I move on to the next project, or?
I think so. If we don't have any, we don't need to make a motion or do anything to, or do we?
No.
Dana, we don't need to do anything, correct?
No.
Right.
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to the next one, which I'm trying to find. 61 Biltmore. This is the Moxie Hotel.
Oh, that's the next one. I'm sorry.
I think, isn't it? Well, that's the next one on mine.
Oh, is it? Okay.
If you've got 217,
Okay.
let's go ahead and do 217.
Okay.
And then we'll let Shannon come in.
Okay. Sorry, Shannon. So this is 217 Hilliard. This came to informal design review at our last design review committee meeting. It has since been to technical review. It is, let's scroll here. So here's the location. So this is an infill development. This existing parcel is being subdivided. This new parcel is about 0.18 of an acre. And so it's really mostly this parking lot, and a little bit of it comes in front of this house, the side of this house. This is a historic house, and won't, it'll be hidden to some degree on a little bit of it on this side. Yes, so, and this is some site pictures of the existing. This is looking down the street. You'll notice here on Hilliard, there's this historic stone wall, and that the sidewalk, you can see the sidewalk's like a 2-foot sidewalk. That's crazy. And really almost no sidewalk here. So, let me see, I wrote.
So it's right next door to the hotspot.
Exactly, yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to go really quick to, sorry, why? Let me just scroll. I wanted to scroll down to the site plan really quickly. So before we look at the renderings, so the great thing about this project is we're going to get a brand new 10-foot sidewalk in front of this building, and they're actually going to extend the sidewalk all the way to the corner, and it'll be an 8-foot sidewalk here. So they're really required to do the 10-foot sidewalk on their frontage. So there's this is the new property line here. We'll get 3 new street trees. And one thing I don't know if we've ever talked about a whole lot at the Downtown Commission is the new tree canopy protection ordinance. And what that does is encourage, protecting tree canopy or adding to it. And in this case, they are required to have 10% of the area either be tree canopy or fee in lieu. Especially for downtown, it can be difficult to do that. So they are providing some area here next to their building and this on the side. And that, I think, is about 5%. And then they're paying a fee in lieu for the other 5%. So I just wanted to review that really quickly. And this always trips me up a little bit because it makes it seem like it's a corner, but it's not. It really just, it's going into that hotspot driveway there. So then just going back to the rendering, here's the materials, some brick, fiber cement, and metal panels. Let me make this bigger for you all. This is the Hilliard facade. So they have their primary entrance here. They have they are using kind of a garage door where it'll roll up and they'll roll carts out for trash on the pickup day and it rolls back in. So there shouldn't be trash sitting out here on a regular, basis. This is, I didn't say, but this is 80 units of micro housing. I think many of you probably already know that. But the idea being that on each floor, you have a kitchen, you have shared facilities, right? So I didn't mark out which was the floor plan. I will find a floor plan before we're done. So this is kind of a rendering here. It is 5 stories. They've got a little bit of a roof deck here. In the informal review, the committee talked about this roof over the deck, feeling like maybe it's not quite finished. And I don't know, Brian or any of you, Stephen Lee, Kimmy, if you want to add to anything here that we talked about. Here's another view. We talked a little bit about mural art on buildings downtown. And really, we've done a little bit of investigation. We don't review murals in downtown. We don't have, basically, I remember Stephanie kind of outlined this for me. You can't have anything that's not decent. I forget the correct word, but nothing that's really kind of crosses the line of objectionable. But we don't regulate colors or content. It can't be a sign. So like if this were a brewery, it couldn't have like a can that said Wedge Brewery on it or something. That counts towards your sign allowance. You could do it. It just counts towards your sign. So.
We talked about the front entrance being better delineated from this corner exit, and there's a few other things like that, but it was generally favorably received from the design review committee.
Right. They do have this kind of privacy wall here. These are units down here, so there was discussion about what that looks like and landscaping and.
So Sasha, this looks like the only thing they changed from the last time I saw it is really just the graphics. Is that correct?
I think so. I haven't finished looking at all of these drawings yet and doing my full review. They did change the sidewalk. They had but that we didn't talk about that. Yeah, but I can't see the question if there was a question. Or...
Yeah, Gio's got his hand up. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I just wanted to make sure that you guys in the design, we've been working with the tree planting specs, especially for sidewalks. And I wanted to make sure that we haven't quite gotten to the newest standard, but if there was some way we could emphasize using the standards that we are developing, I think we'll get much healthier trees. And I know just 2 trees doesn't seem like a lot, but it's 2 trees that we don't have right now. And for this project, and I think the next one we're going to talk about, that we make sure that we use the latest standards, or even the ones that we're working on right now that should be going to council pretty soon. We really worked very hard for that.
So do you mean specifically Silva cells?
Silva cells, but also being able to interconnect adjoining tree zones, so that there's be some suspended safe pavement, and that that beneath the sidewalk there's actually adjoining of the root zones, so they can work with each other and create a larger growing area.
Got it.
Larger soil
Thank
body.
you.
And that's one of the things that we're trying to do. And if I think Videla might be able to tell you at what point we are, but we've gotten quite a ways into getting those details ironed out.
Yeah, we're really close on that. Well, I was going to try to touch on that when we get to our boards or our committee reports piece, but thank you. And there are actually 3 street trees. So a couple of things just from a public safety standpoint. This is a really advantageous project because it provides a good sidewalk where we currently only have people. If you drive through this area, there are a lot of people walking back and forth, and they're right on the road. up against that wall. So this creates a much safer zone. It creates, we get 3 trees where street trees where we currently have none. Just from a public safety standpoint, this is a really advantageous project. It's activating currently. There's nothing going on. There's just a low stone wall. So there are several pieces to this project that I think are really good from a downtown perspective. Any other comments regarding this?
And I guess if you don't mind, I will just comment on what you just said. Ms. Hunter brought up lighting in this area during this informal review, and I've done a little bit of digging on that. And apparently the city, either we ask a developer if a developer can request Duke Power, because I guess we lease all our streetlights from Duke Progress. And so they will do a study of a building. Duke will just do it for you and kind of come up with a recommendation of lighting, because there's certain standards of kind of making lighting even, like there's no giant hot spots and the light's not bleeding over out into the, all over the place. Or if a citizen makes a request, the city will make that request of Duke. So apparently we don't have a systemic way that we're evaluating our streets on a regular basis.
So would streetlights be added as part of this project? Go ahead, Kimmy.
Well, I actually like your question, Brian. So maybe Sasha answer that, and then I'll chime in. Thanks.
Your question was, would
the developer be providing streetlights as part of the sidewalk improvement piece?
Shannon might know the answer to that better than I do. I don't know exactly how that works. I mean, I know the Cambria had streetlights put in. That's the only one I know about.
They wouldn't be required to do streetlights, but they could, because it's an existing street that already, in theory, is already lit. So if, like Sasha had described, if they felt like they needed or wanted more light for whatever reason, they could contact Duke. The city has some standards for streetlight spacing, but the standard is very different in the downtown, where you might want to have more light. But oftentimes these projects, especially when they have ground level activation, there's also light that comes from the building itself. And so that's where the development team and the architects kind of look at, what their lighting needs are, and, whether or not there's something more that's needed. The street lights are really meant to light the street for the most part. So sometimes it's building lighting or site lighting that they use to kind of light the areas around the building.
And you can email us later if that's better. How do we actually approach this intelligently and in a way where we could get down the road with lighting? Because it is a factor for me on every project, because of lots of reasons, not just because there's a inherent negative disposition towards dark-skinned people without lighting, but there's other factors, safety and other things. So how do we, because I'm going to bring it up on every project, how do we actually do something with it where it actually moves the needle? That's what I'm interested in, because I think we can really make a difference downtown if the lighting also changed, and whether it was required by the developer or not, but we put some kind of plan in place.
Right. Yeah, and I've started doing a little bit of research, because I agree. I think it would be helpful to have kind of a broad kind of research or any other best practices or data that we could pull from to come up with kind of a guiding policy or practices. I think as a committee, if you wanted to talk to the chair and the vice chair, and the committee could kind of make that request of staff, but we can definitely start talking about internally about what it looks like.
Because it's a design feature. This isn't personal. This is a design element. So it has to get in here somewhere. It's being left out. And as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it. And I just want to do something and not just keep bringing it up.
Right.
I'll get to
Lighting
you.
is a little tricky. I should say that while there certainly is a design element as it relates to these projects, there are a number of other city departments that are involved and invested in that subject as well, particularly as it relates to street lighting. So our sustainability office, our public works department, our transportation department, our police department, they all have kind of an interest in that. So I think if we're going to explore it, it would need to be a multidisciplinary, multi-departmental effort.
Well, eventually it needs to get into the our key pedestrian streets and our downtown master plan. All right, I've got Sage and then Stephen Lee. Go ahead, Sage.
That's ultimately what I was going to say. There have been multiple occasions this came up on, and we always talked about it being a design guideline or a recommendation, particularly in, more than just the street frontage, all areas of the property. I know Ms. Hunter and I have talked about this in light of what happened with Johnny Rush, and had lighting been in place, would it have affected the outcomes? And so I support, I'm long cheering us on to update the design guidelines, but that's on the list in my book.
Stephen Lee.
I think my response is pretty similar, but I think in terms of what needs to be done, Kim, you just bring up a really good point that opens up a much larger discussion. But an example would be Haywood Street that was recently renovated. Lighting on streets like this has to be a very comprehensive city-led design effort. And I think, Kim, what we're all saying is that this is just a good general reminder that our key pedestrian and corridors like Hilliard need to have at least a plan put in place. And it could be simple, but there needs to be some type of action plan identified. We can see how good it can look when it's well thought out, but there's still streets, especially the smaller, more dense streets, that the lighting is inappropriate. The fixtures are ancient, and an upgrade is imminent, and it needs to be part of this comprehensive plan. Thanks.
Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you, Brian. So I really appreciate the commission and every person, each of one of you, and seeing this as a really valuable conversation. And Sasha, I appreciate you bringing it up, because here's the main thing. There's so many things about design I don't understand, but I want to offer that every time we leave lighting out of a design element, we are actually continuing to perpetuate harms against our community members. So it has to be a priority. I know we have lots of priorities. I understand they're competing in some instances. And let me say, everybody's doing a good job of figuring out how to get things done. But as a human in a Black Earth suit, I cannot emphasize this enough, that lighting left out of design is actually harmful. And I want to continue to emphasize it over and over again like a broken record until it gets fixed. And I appreciate you all understanding that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Sasha, do you have enough notes to move this one forward?
I do. Yeah. I mean, unless anybody has any comments about colors or
Andrew's got a question. I thought Megan had a hand up too. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew.
Megan was first. She'd been waiting for a second.
Well, I wanted to make sure that we had completed the conversation about lighting before I segued into something else. Just on that same line, given the conversation that we've had about noise and noise ordinance recently, I wonder if that's being talked about early on with these developers, particularly in residential projects, and how to coordinate so that we're not having issues down the line. Just a question.
So do you mean like a conversation with a developer saying, hey, this is downtown and there's a lot of noise kind of thing? Is that what
and anything they can do to make sure that the project, any abatement they can do to make sure that the project isn't going to have, the residents in the project aren't going to have concerns later, maybe.
Okay.
And I had a long conversation with city staff members. This was several months ago, who asked me my opinion about noise. And Megan, to your point, I had a very lengthy conversation about any development and how there's implicit bias. If the building isn't built correctly for sound dampening, it creates implicit bias for renters which is a whole nother socioeconomic matter. I know we say these things don't have anything to do with design, but I promise you they do.
Andrew, go ahead.
Yeah, first I'd like to note a couple of things I really like about this project, which is we're getting rid of surface parking. We're expanding. I nominate this sidewalk for, I know it's a close race, but I nominate this sidewalk for worst sidewalk in downtown. I mean, it's really barely even a sidewalk. It's really awful. As someone who lives around the corner from here, I have to, it sort of wants to become a shared street. The sidewalk is so bad, but it's definitely not set up to be that way. It looks like the existing bike lane is not impacted by that. By this though. Is that correct?
We so after TRC, I met the engineers, myself and Ken Putnam met. So there is a small impact. I mean, the bike lane will be maintained, but it's going to be narrowed a little bit. But still, I think it's still a 5-foot bike lane. So we're trying to maintain it, but at the same time have and the travel lanes may be, they're still they're decent width. I don't know if I can't remember, but Ken was okay with their plan. So we talked that through and how that works.
Okay, so but that's really what we're getting out of that is a 10-foot sidewalk that meets the rest of the downtown standards, and that's really huge. I will note though that, like, just as far as the design, the ground floor is all there's like first floor units on there, which is a really unusual feature in downtown. Like hotels typically don't even put units on the first floor, like living units or lodging units. So I find that to be a really unusual feature for the use of this building. And I'm also, and while I welcome housing, especially, it's sort of like every stripe, and especially, of not the luxury portion, because, obviously that luxury housing money has a lot of places to go, and rental and non-luxury housing money has very, very few places to go. So I welcome that, but it's from a livability perspective, living in downtown on the ground floor, it's a little questionable. It's something we don't see. Do they need an exception for that?
No.
Is there any ground floor activation that they're avoiding and putting units there instead?
No, we don't. We allow this in downtown, and actually I know what you mean, but we do have other examples of this throughout downtown. We have talked over the years about should we be allowing all residential buildings with no ground floor activation, and I think we see the benefits of housing so much that we didn't really want to. I mean, it's worth it. Having additional units is kind of worth. Those folks will be activating other parts of the streets, right? So we've never changed that rule. So like the Carolina, which I know is, the elevation, the Carolina Apartments is all residential. The condominiums down on Short Cox and South Side. There's other examples.
The one behind the loft.
Yes, the garage apartments. Yeah,
that's right. I know Market Street we did a project on Market Street that had some ground floor residential.
Yep.
So yeah, I guess that's just what I was thinking, but there may not be a lot of utility in trying to get involved in regulating a ground floor residential. And I look at this and it's like it's right downtown. It's a transit corridor. You can walk to a bus station. You can walk to a grocery store currently. I know at Hopi. And we're losing that one, I think, soon. So there's a lot of benefits to this, especially that bigger sidewalk. I would love to see I bet there's been some vehicular pedestrian incidents here, and this has to help that. But this whole this whole street really needs that help. But yeah, I hope this is for locals.
Yeah, and all the units are supposed to be at 80% AMI or below, and I think they're pursuing an agreement with city for a land use incentive grant. So
we're going to do Gio, and we're going to wrap it up because I need to move to the next one. Thank you.
I'll make it very quick. I just you all know the hotspot. There's a lot of activity there, and I think this project will make that area a lot safer, but you have more eyes on the street. And going back to the lighting situation, if we can get consistent lighting that helps with the security along the street, I think this will be a great improvement. And I'm glad to see this happen. Thank you.
Very good. Wonderful. With that, I'd say we move on to 61 Biltmore, the Moxie Hotel. This is essentially finishing the loft. Is kind of what this project is. So I think Shannon, if you're ready to talk to us about that one.
Yeah, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So as Brian has indicated, this next item on your agenda is the development impact discussion for the new addition that would be located just south of the existing 51 Biltmore site. That's the Aloft Hotel that I think probably most of us here, if not everybody, is already somewhat familiar with. So in looking at the site plan, I think the important thing to note is that it's got a very limited site impact. It really is kind of filling a void that currently exists today, and with a very limited amount of site improvements just directly in front of the proposed building addition, as well as along the alley to the south. The site in total is about an acre, just under an acre. And as you can see from the site plan, the entire site has frontage on 3 public roads: Biltmore Avenue to the east, Aston to the north, South Lex to the west, and then we've got the unnamed alley just to the south. However, again, the impact of this project is very small. So it's really going to fit the void here, and then it's going to go up and over the existing levels that are of the parking deck that are currently exposed. And I'm going to switch my view real quick to the Google Street View so you can kind of see exactly where we're talking about. So of course, that's the Aloft Hotel there. And then here's that void. And this project, I should say, the Aloft was a conditional zoning back in 2008. And at the time, there was always the plan for a future building at this location. So it was actually designed, there's a condominium document associated with this project and with this property. And it contemplated 3 condominiums: the Aloft Hotel, the public parking deck, and then the this third building here. So this is the third condominium. So an amendment to the conditional zoning is not required. This is basically completing what was already approved back in 2008. We do, however, with subsequent projects like this, we do require that the new development meet all of the technical standards that are in place at the time of application. So this is a new level 2 application. It is a 115-room hotel. So it does have to comply with not just the conditional zoning from 2008, but also with our current development standards. So this is one of the first hotels that will be coming through that is required to have a positive recommendation from the development review, or excuse me, the design review committee, as well as provide public benefits. And I can talk about the public benefits again, after I go through the design proposal. So again, this is the location. It will go up, and then you can see the exposed portion of the parking deck here. So it'll go up and over that. And this will become more apparent when we look at the elevations for the project. So let me move forward. So here you go. You can see this is the east elevation, probably what we would refer to as the front of the building. This is the Biltmore Avenue elevation. You can see it is an 8-story building addition. It is a standalone flag, but it will be collectively managed by the same hotel group as the Aloft, and there are some shared amenities and facilities between the 2 hotels. I think like a fitness area and some things like that will be shared between the 2 hotels. And I do believe there are some internal connections as well. You can see that the upper floors kind of line up with the Aloft's upper floors. And I think that's for some of that shared amenity space and cross access. The lower floors don't as much, but they do a pretty nice job of lining up, which is one of the recommendations that comes out of the downtown design guidelines. The step back is also located at a slightly different location compared to the loft. You know, they have a lower step back at their balcony. This project also has a balcony where the street wall height and the step back occur. So it's a little bit mismatched, but you can see they've kind of tried to line that up with one of the floor plates for the loft hotel. So you can also probably tell from the design, it's a more industrial look. So it will be a little unique. It's not going to have kind of the same style as the Aloft Hotel, even though they do have some connectivity. It's predominantly metal and like painted metal and glass is the main materials that dominate the exposed facades. There is a little bit of ephes proposed kind of at the upper stories, particularly on some of the other elevations. So let me scroll through here. So here you can see this would be the view from that alley, the unnamed alley to the south. And so you can see this is the existing parking garage that's currently exposed. And so this is the portion of the project that kind of goes over those lower levels of that parking structure. And this is where some of that ephes material is located. They are also proposing some wood accents. I don't know if it's a true wood or if it's just a material that sort of looks like wood, but but that's relatively minor, and they're really just sort of accents on the building.
Do they still have the mural on this side?
They haven't changed that they were going to be doing a mural. It's not unlike the earlier conversation. You know, we just will. They're free to pursue a mural. We don't really have specific requirements for it other than the things that Sasha mentioned, avoiding indecent or obscene images or, you know, trying to steer clear of any issues with sign code, that kind of thing.
Is that part of their public benefit application though?
They,
as a hotel?
Yeah, so they're proposing, I'll just go ahead and mention, they're proposing 4 pieces to their public benefits package. 3 of the 4 are contributions to various funds, including the city's Affordable Housing and Reparations Fund. Public art is another contribution that they'll be making, as well as neighborhood improvement. The 4th item is they have committed to paying a living wage for their employees. So collectively, those benefits will satisfy their requirement for this level 2 project.
Thank you.
So moving along on the elevations, this is the rear elevation. So from South Lexington, it's a little hard to tell from this particular rendering, but this is all of the apartments that we mentioned just earlier in the previous application where we had some of those ground level units. So it's going to be, this rendering doesn't do it justice. You know, it's going to be more attractive than that because we already have residents located here along the street. And then the north elevation along Hilliard, again, this is the existing hotel that's grayed out. So you will see the new construction sort of pop up over the top of those lower levels of the hotel and parking structure. Let me scroll through. So here we go. Here's some of the renderings where you can see, you probably get a better sense of, you know, the character of the project. And you can see the amount of glass and the metal framework around the glass that will be used, that bit of ephes here. The applicant did recently submit a revised illustrative of this facade. They're changing their color scheme. I think it's a minor change. It won't be quite as light as it's shown here. It's going to be a darker gray, combination of darker grays in this ephes, which I think will actually be kind of nice and might help distinguish it from the Aloft Hotel a little bit more. Moving along, so a better view of that south side from that shared alley. I should have mentioned when I was on the site plan, the applicant also does propose to redo the work in the alley. They're gonna put pavers and turn it into a pedestrian pathway rather than it would be close to vehicular use. So they're working with the adjacent property owner on that, and so that will also be part of this project work. Oh, and you can see here too, there is a small bit of rooftop activation as well. Sorry, Brian, were you going to say
I
something?
said that's huge, the making that alley a pedestrian way.
Yeah.
That's how I get to 67 Biltmore.
And then here, a view from Biltmore Avenue, kind of looking at the building as it is, as it would relate to the existing Aloft Hotel. They are also proposing they're going to keep the existing transit shelter, but they are going to relocate it slightly just to kind of keep it from being like directly in front of their front door. They're working with our transportation staff on that. Make sure
They
it's
should
an
really
acceptable
redesign
location.
it while they're at it.
I mentioned that as well. And, maybe that's someone with that neighborhood improvement money can be for, we'll see. And then again, another image. You can see in an earlier discussion at the design review committee, this project did go to design review for informal review and was generally well received. We had a short discussion about a possible mural located at this location. They found an image of an old historic hotel that had been located on the site, and they were playing with ways as to how to reflect that in a mural, that could kind of speak to what was there before when we have this new construction. And then the materials, as I mentioned, they were proposing this, some ephes, the painted metal, those wood accents, and then of course the insulated glass. So I think that concludes my summary of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions or go back to any of the images.
Gio.
I'm glad you brought up the alleyway because I love these little alleyways that we have downtown, but some of them can be very dark and dangerous. And going back to that discussion we had earlier, the previous project of making sure that it's a well-lighted space. It's rich with detail where people will actually cut through and feel comfortable going to it. I'm glad they're doing all that. There's also opportunities of artwork along that and enhancements along the alleyway. So I'm really, really glad that they're paying attention to that.
And Shannon, per the last discussion as well, I think it's going to be prudent to let CDC know that we're going to be looking for the best tree standards for those 2 street tree grates that they're looking at. I'm working on out there. Andrew, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I'm wondering about that alley. I'd love to see that they're going to restrict the vehicular access there. Are they going to do that with bollards? Is it going to be gated and restricted and sort of privatized in that way? And also, this is one of the longest blocks that we have in town, from Aston down to Hilliard. And it's also a 35-mile-per-hour road. And so when I'm thinking about how people are going to, when they're not in their cars, how this could potentially change things. I'm wondering, if you come out of that alley, people are going to want to cross the street there. Is there any potential for the city to work and get a crosswalk there? Because if you want to cross the street here legally, you either have to walk all the way down to Hilliard, cross Biltmore, and then walk back up, or you have to go up to Aston, cross Aston because there's no crosswalk on this side of the block, then cross Biltmore, and then walk back down and cross another side street. So there's just like from a pedestrian movement aspect, I really see that that there's going to be people wanting to cross the street there. Because I work across 76. I know that some of the visitors are going to be my patrons at work. And I see people illegally crossing all the time right here. Seems like we've got an opportunity while we're doing this to work on to enhance the pedestrian experience. I know this is a DOT street and that's going to be problematic, but if we don't take opportunities like this to work on that, then when do we take them?
Go ahead, Sage.
I was just going to share what I do know about crosswalks on Biltmore because I manage a lot of property on that stretch. And the corner at Orange Peel and I guess it's Ukiah now, is going to be a crosswalk. It's just a matter of time until they install. Should be kind of, I was thinking this year, but it could be next year. And I know folks have tried to get one. It took a long time to get the one at Manicomio. I'm so thrilled to have that one, but they must have some kind of distance between. I mean, I'm all for pushing for it. I watch people cross that road dangerously as is. I'll never forget almost seeing a pregnant woman almost get hit by a car crossing that road. Yeah, but well said, Andrew. It would be great to have more pedestrian access there.
I'll be happy to check in with other staff to see what has to be considered for an improvement like that.
Cool. The other thing I'm going to notice is right now there's a curb cut right there that leads into, because it's for vehicular access, and they're going to go to a granite curb and the normal sidewalk standard. I wonder if there's potential to have some more on-street parking there. I'm all in favor of taking, curb cuts that are no longer have use and turning them into more on-street parking or on-street activation. There's several curb cuts on this block that are sort of, are no longer used in their original design. So is there any potential for parking expansion right there, or parklet use, or anything like that?
Be happy to check on that too.
Okay. The other question I have is, do we know how long, right now the transit shelter is there, and they're going to take it away and give it back. How long is it going to be that people waiting for the bus are going to get soaked? So I know ultimately it'll be back, but I mean, people are going to be counting the raindrops if they're waiting for on a bus there right now. So do we know that?
We don't, but I'll be happy to check on that more. I know our transportation staff are usually pretty strict about minimizing any gaps in service or accommodations. So I suspect they're probably going to want to try to see everything done and put in place before they remove so that there's almost no gap in accommodation. So, but I'll check.
All right. And I just got to say, in general, I feel this is a little bit of a bait and switch, because I remember the idea when this was built, and I know that it's on the site of a hotel, but now we've got two hotels on the site of a historic hotel, and at 115 rooms, this is right under the threshold for a council review. So if that 115 number for people who are going to be watching this and looking at how hotel development happens in lieu of other development, then that 115 number is going to be real popular. We're going to see that again and again. So if so basically, even though council's not going to vote on this, and we don't really, other than design review, we don't really get a lot of community input on this. Council voted for this project when they put that threshold at 116. So anybody who voted for the current hotel development system voted for this hotel at 115 rooms. That's what we're seeing here. And now that this is a level 2 review instead of level 3, and there's no conditional use for this, I believe, because if it's a level 2, that this is the first of many things like this. And I did some research to try to find how that site was discussed when it was originally pitched, and you can see that if you want to leverage hotel to make other things happen, that's one way to leverage hotel construction, hotel income into other types of development. But we've already got one hotel here, and we're just going to have another one. This would be a prime example of place where we could have housing or other things that the community needs. Because when I look at the balance of uses, we're not. How are we balancing our uses if we're adding 115 hotel rooms to a block that already has that many? I just absolutely do not see a balance of growth happening here, and it's just things are way out of whack, and I'm not pleased to see that the potential for adding housing here has been surpassed for the potential of profit off of people who don't live here.
Folks, it's 10 minutes after 11. I appreciate everybody continuing to stay on. Are there any other comments or questions regarding this? First of all, I think this actually has to comply with the earlier CZ, first of all. So I think that is correct. And second, Shannon, is there a, so there used to be a rule, if a developer did another project within 5 years and it was the same developer, is there a similar, they have to, it would be whatever level that would, the combined projects would be. Is there a similar rule for the room count? I know it wouldn't necessarily apply to this one since we've passed the ordinance in its time. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
There is that. So that rule still applies. It's the rule is that if a project that represents different projects, multiple projects that are within 500 feet, 3 years of each other by the same developer and represent different phases of a project, that they get combined for review purposes. So this could, as Brian said, this was part of a CZ, but if it hadn't been, we could potentially combine them, except that this project is outside that 3-year window. So the conditional zoning and the Aloft Hotel was 2008. So we're a good bit outside that 3-year window. So we do look at this as a separate new project.
Would the same thing apply for the 116 room limit? In other words, could a developer build a 116 room hotel, a 115 room hotel, and then 4 years later come back and build an additional 115 rooms?
Yes.
And stay under the limit. Okay, that's interesting.
Now
Megan,
there is another combination rule as it relates to additions. So if the developer came back and did an addition on a project that kind of triggered certain thresholds, they could be combined. And there is no year window on that. It's just anytime an addition that is of a certain size as it relates to as a percentage of the original square footage, that could potentially trigger a higher review. But when it's a separate project, like if they acquired property across the street and decided to do another hotel 4 years later, you are correct. They'd be looked at as separate projects. They wouldn't be combined.
okay. Megan, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a quick question about parking. I think I saw that 2 parking spaces in the deck are going to be permanently removed. Is the hotel hoping to utilize any more spaces for guest parking? Like the Aloft?
Yes. So the original agreement that is, kind of detailed in those condominium documents and shared parking agreement kind of spells out how many rooms are available to the McKibben Hotel Group and how many are available to the city for public parking. So those numbers don't change. In this particular case, what's going to happen is that the 2 hotels will have to share what's available to the McKibben Hotel Group. And because the original project was not required to provide parking, the new project is. So on paper, the Moxie Hotel's parking requirement is satisfied by the existing parking spaces. But the reality is, and in practicality, those 2 hotels will share the available parking.
We've covered lighting, we've covered street trees, we've covered the urban design elements of the pedestrian walkway. We talked about a little bit about downtown master plan alignment. We talked a little bit about building design. I'm assuming there's nothing, it's all impervious, so they've already got stormwater handled in the original project. And we talked a little bit about parking. Are there any other comments or questions any other commission members have? Kimmy.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to quickly state, I know this isn't exactly related in a concrete way, but it is actually inferenced. So all this hotel overlay district stuff and what we review really points to a bigger picture of citywide events that probably will be on the horizon once we have a certain threshold of hotels, and then that will produce other issues that impact noise and other resident and community member needs. So, I know that we're evaluating each project by project, but collectively, even though people own their own land and they're allowed to do what they want to do, collectively, when it leads to a whole new movement for a city, like citywide events and things of that nature post-COVID, it will have future potential positive and unintended consequential issues. So I just wanted to make that for the record somewhere in this world. Thank you.
Go ahead, Andrew. You're muted.
There we go. For anybody watching at home, we don't get to vote on this here. Design review will get to vote on it. And so I'd encourage my friends on design review to ask these really hard questions that seem to have some really direct answers. Do we 20 years from now, is this part of the Asheville that we need to see? Is this going to have, I know we go like Commissioner Hunter said, we look at things project by project, but that's not how we experience the town. We don't experience the town project by project. We experience the town as a whole and as a collective. And this absolutely does not contribute to, this does nothing to solve any of the problems we have. This does not serve locals very well. And I know that they're going to be paying a living wage, but for how long? I've seen folks do that or like use contract labor to avoid doing that. And so I just really hope that we get some good answers on this thing, and we're not going to get them at the council level. So it's going to be up to planning and zoning and design review to ask those questions if the public's going to know those things about how our land use is being developed. So I'm really going to encourage our members here that are on design review to do the lift that we can't do at Downtown Commission anymore, and ask those hard questions about how this fits into our Living Asheville plan. And I do not see that it does whatsoever. Pedestrian access, to be applauded, but we could get pedestrian access and have the uses of the building fit into the master plan. But as far as the Living Asheville comprehensive plan, I absolutely don't see it does right now. So as far as I'm concerned, there's ample leeway to vote against this project at every level.
Thank you. Any other comments? And we'll do our best to take these through and address them with the applicant directly. Any other comments or questions or that we need to communicate to Shannon as she shepherds this through? Thank you all. Okay, thank you, Shannon. We'll move on, and I'm just going to jump down into updates and reports. Again, thank you so much, folks, for sticking with us. Design Review Committee, Stephen Lee, got you.
Yes, our committee met. Last meeting was August 19th. There was one formal review, and that was a project that the Downtown Commission has already reviewed as well. It was the Old Europe project, and I think at our last meeting we discussed those comments. There were two informal design reviews that occurred. One of them was the 217 Hilliard project, which we just reviewed as a commission. The other was one that has not come before the Downtown Commission yet. It was 48 South Market Street. And it was well received. Architect Laura Hudson was there to present, and it's a pretty nifty infill project. And that's the end of my report.
Cool. Thank you. Megan, Asheville Downtown Association.
Yep, I'll be quick. Unfortunately, we're back at the canceling event stages. We did some surveying of the folks involved with events, and there was enough concern amongst sponsors, volunteers, vendors, and the like to go ahead and move forward with canceling some of our events. Easy decision to make in a public health crisis, difficult because it supports local businesses and local musicians and otherwise. We'll hope to hear about the parade here soon. And I think I told you guys last month about some surveys we had out. The mask mandate survey, of course, went to council and commission right away once it was completed. And I'm working on some summary reports for our mid-year issues survey that we had out. And we will share those, of course, with city and county officials as well. That's all.
Succinct and awesome. Thank
Megan,
you.
so you're saying that downtown after 5 is canceled for the next week?
Yep. Unfortunately, yeah.
Oh, funny.
Stacy Merton has a city council update on hotels.
Chair Moffitt, I think Dana wanted just to say a few words because she has to leave. So
yeah, I wanted to make sure that you all, Dana has to leave the building, so I just wanted to, yeah.
Sorry, I have to run at 11:30. I think most of you know this at this point, but I am leaving my job with the city, and I know there's going to be more to share in the days and weeks ahead in terms of transitioning. But I'll be working with Thrive Asheville, and I'm excited to continue to be involved in moving important things forward in Asheville, and they have some important work coming up to look at strategies for sustainable tourism. But anyway, I have loved working with all of you. I've loved working downtown and just getting to do so many different things and work with so many different people. But wanted to let you all know that it's my last meeting. But I will see you. I will see you around. I will work with you in different ways. And thanks for everything that you guys do.
Well, we deeply appreciate your service. We appreciate your dedication. We're going to miss being directly involved with you, but we're glad you're not going far. Anyone who wants to speak, just jump in.
Yeah, I know I've been working with Dana, I think, since probably about your first day with the city. Probably, or at least your first week, I'd say we probably met. And I just want to say thank you for how you changed and improved all the conversations that I've had and all the projects I've worked with on the city with you. And I know I pushed you to the limits of your office and of your power, but I always appreciated the spirit and the access and the information that you helped provide. It helps me be a better commissioner and be a better ambassador for what the city needs and what the city can do. And so your attitude and your spirit was really a game changer when you got hired, and those are real big shoes to fill. And I really so much appreciate all the work that we've done together. So I'll see you at Thrive Asheville.
Thanks, Andrew.
okay, I'm Stacy Martin with Planning and Urban Design, and I'm going to just give you a brief update on the hotel regulations. There is a full report going to council on the 14th. And I also have an 11:30 commitment, so I'm going to try to make this quick. But basically, there's been 5 projects so far that have been reviewed under the new hotel regulations. All have been downtown. 3 are large hotels and 2, thank you, 2 are small. 4 have had the option to meet the public benefits, and 1, the 4 Point Sheraton, went to council. And so as I just want to make sure everybody knows that when the project goes to council, then it does not have to meet the public benefits table. So that's why we say that they don't have to meet the public benefits. Now, that doesn't mean that they don't provide some form of public benefits, as you all saw following that project, but it's not required per the ordinance in the public benefits table. So we've estimated, since we don't know exactly how, what specific public benefits these projects are going to meet yet, but we estimate that between $650,000 and $1 million will be contributed to housing and reparations for the public benefits table through these 5 projects. Overall, we feel like the things are working as they were intended to work. We are going to be recommending a few wording text amendments. 2 of them are just to clarify things that were what we intended and how they've been interpreted. One is the off-street parking requirements for all lodging uses, including downtown. That it's just going to be a text amendment that will clarify that that was our intention. And the other would be that hotels that do not go to council, the way the ordinance reads, it says that they'll all be level 2, but some may actually be level 1 depending on their size. So we're just going to make that small clarification. Probably the bigger issue is the definition of hotels that we plan to amend, or we would recommend to amend, to make it clear that the extended stay hotel is allowed, but that the condo hotels will be defined as short-term vacation rentals, and they will not be allowed in the hotel overlay district. And then are there any questions about that before I go on? Because then I just want to talk about the design review process.
Yeah, real quick, that one, does the new state law that would affect our short-term rentals, is that going to affect anything regarding that, the condotels?
It may if it gets passed. So I guess we'll have to cross that bridge when it comes to it.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Just really quick, what is the functional difference between extended stay and condotel?
It's basically that a condotel does act, in our opinion, and Shannon's really the expert on this, but that it acts like a short-term vacation rental. And that's what we're trying to distinguish between that. Whereas an extended stay hotel is really a hotel that just has, could have a kitchen and other facilities for longer term stay.
So we are recommending that we update the definition of hotel to be more specific about how a hotel is run, so that these condotels, basically wouldn't be able to meet the definition of a hotel. So it might, not just include single management, but, having on-site staff 24/7, having housekeeping facilities in-house, having the things that you typically and commonly see with a legitimate extended stay hotel, as opposed to these condotel versions. So that's our strategy. We've been advised by our legal counsel that we can't base it on ownership. So having multiple individually owned condominium units collectively run as a hotel, that wouldn't necessarily preclude somebody from being classified as an extended stay hotel. So we're trying to focus more on how it's run and managed.
So I remember was it the Star Building project sort of this came up with that, and it was, so this is just trying to close that loophole and unite the regulations.
Correct. And it's a tricky thing. The lodging industry has really evolved in the last 10 years or so. And it's a tough thing. The lines are getting blurred more and more. So it may not completely close that loophole. Like I said, there could be versions of extended stay hotels that do allow for individual ownership, maybe more like a timeshare kind of product. But it will certainly help. At least some of the projects and initial inquiries that we're getting now, I think we might be able to prevent those, but maybe not all of them.
If I wanted to build hotels, I would listen to what you said, Brian, about just building 115 room hotels every 4 years, and what you said, Shannon, about running a timeshare. So you guys are, we're thinking ahead, but so are they.
You got 2 minutes, Stacy.
Okay. So Shannon's on the other call that I'll be on, so maybe she can fill in for me. But then the other thing is about the design committee. Things are the committee's working well. I think the process is going well. The problem is that we don't have a full complement from the Riverfront Commission. So what we have discussed is the possibility of, instead of having 4 members from each of the commissions, is just proposing 3 from each, and then actually having 3 members at large appointed by council. And we think this will also help for us to sort of fill in the gaps, as far as expertise and diversity, and it kind of opens up the field to a greater pool of candidates for the commission. The one thing is, or the committee, I should say, the way it would work, it would, the folks that are on there now would stay on there, but then as someone rolled off of the downtown commission, then that seat would not be filled again. And then we would pull in somebody from the outside. So that is what we'll be recommending to council.
I volunteer to roll off.
Any other questions?
And I'd love to roll on. So please keep
There you
me.
go.
I mean, you know me. I love this on.
That's why I recruited you, Gio. That's why I wanted you, man.
Any questions for Stacy regarding the hotel ordinance and update? With 1 minute to spare, look at that.
Yay! Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. All right. Downtown update report. Sasha, you want me to just roll over that since Dana's already?
Sure. I mean, or if I don't know if you all have any questions, I can answer development questions. I'm not familiar with the rest of her report.
Well, hopefully everyone has access to it, right? You've all got that. Public survey to get feedback on the Asheville Share Space initiative. The city is, as our earlier presentation alluded to, they're working on vetting uses of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. It looks like City Council is going to vote on the categories on that at their September next week's meeting. There's some development project updates. The 3 that we went over today. We'll go to the design review committee next week, and then there's the 22 Woodfin, the 4 Point Sheraton. The big one was approved as a conditional rezoning by City Council back in August. The new noise ordinance goes fully into effect next week. And then I think there's also that 6-month kind of review period that will go into effect with that, if I remember correctly from the ordinance. Grenine, bless her heart, she's the interim noise administrator. Okay, condolences to her. Greenway pedestrian master plan input. There's a link to that on providing feedback. I would encourage all members to please provide feedback on the Greenway pedestrian master plan. Man, we really need a pedestrian street survey for downtown. That's somewhat related in my mind anyway. Public meeting format and mass requirements. Obviously, we're going to be virtually until we get further recommendations from Buncombe County Health and North Carolina Public Health. So any questions on the downtown update?
I'd just like to make an observation that last I heard, part of the ARPA fund money was slated to refill the parking fund after depletion during the pandemic. I just think this is not a great idea because it's an enterprise fund. It's going to refill itself. That money could really be used for a lot of more pressing needs than filling a hole in a bank account that will eventually fill itself. So it doesn't need to be dedicated to that. There's options there. So there's a lot of other downtown needs, just plugging that hole in that bank account, which is an enterprise fund again, is really dollars poorly spent when we've got a lot of other pressing needs. So I'd encourage us to ask our council to redirect those funds.
Thank you.
Hey, I'll just follow up to say we actually voted on that at the last meeting. There was a similar discussion as such, but it went through.
Okay. Any other comments on the downtown update? I will try to make sure we have something on the future agenda to discuss the parklets and what we're going to be doing for the winter, because as we extend some of the mandates, it seems like we need to continue to have a plan to address that downtown. So I'll try to make a note of that. I really appreciate you folks staying on. We had a good discussion today, I think, on several issues, and we're going to miss Dana. If there are no further comments or questions, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
That's a first. Is there a second?
A second.
Second. All in favor, wave and log off. Thank you very much. See you soon.